September 12, 1983. A Wells Fargo security facility in West Hartford, Connecticut. Inside the building were millions of dollars in cash. And inside that building was a man everyone trusted. By the end of the night, more than $7 million would be gone. 2 employees would be left bound and helpless. A getaway car would be abandoned just miles away. And the man responsible would disappear so completely that, more than 4 decades later, investigators still don't know exactly where he is. His name was Victor Manuel Gerena. But the strangest part of this story isn't how he stole the money. It's what happened after he walked away with it. Victor Gerena was only 25 years old. He worked as a security guard for Wells Fargo and appeared to be a trusted employee. He was also a father of 2 and engaged to be married. Nothing about his life, at least on the surface, suggested that he was about to become one of America's longest-running fugitives. Then, on September 12th, Gerena arrived at work with an unusual request. He asked his supervisor if he could park a car inside the Wells Fargo facility. He claimed it belonged to a friend, and that he wanted to protect it from damage or theft. The car was a large 1973 Buick LeSabre. His supervisor eventually allowed it inside. At the time, nobody knew why Gerena wanted that particular car so close to the money. They would soon find out. That day, Gerena and his partner completed their normal collection route. They picked up cash from banks and businesses throughout the area. By the time they returned to the Wells Fargo facility, the amount of money inside was enormous. The total stolen that night would later be calculated at approximately $7 million. But Gerena wasn't interested in stealing a few bags and running. He appeared to have something much bigger planned. And there was one problem. 2 other men were still inside, his partner and their supervisor. Gerena had to deal with both of them. Late that night, Gerena asked his partner for his gun. He claimed he wanted to check it in. Instead, he turned the weapon against his co-workers. He ordered both men onto the floor. Then, he restrained them. Their hands were handcuffed. Their mouths were taped shut. Their feet were bound, and jackets were placed over their heads so they couldn't see what was happening. Then Gerena did something bizarre. He injected both men with a liquid and told them it would make them fall asleep. But it didn't work. The substance was later determined to be a mixture involving aspirin and water. The men remained conscious. They could hear what was happening. They just couldn't stop it. And for the next hour and a half, they could only listen. Gerena began moving the cash from the Wells Fargo terminal to the Buick, bag after bag, millions of dollars. The operation reportedly took around 90 minutes. Think about that. For an hour and a half, a man was repeatedly carrying millions of dollars through a facility while 2 of his co-workers lay helpless nearby. There was no chaotic gun battle, no explosion, no desperate struggle, just a remarkably controlled robbery. Eventually, Gerena had loaded the money. Then came the final step. He needed to get out, and apparently, he wasn't alone. Gerena honked the Buick's horn. Investigators later believed this may have been a signal to an accomplice waiting outside. The bay door opened. The Buick drove away, and Victor Gerena disappeared into the darkness. The 2 employees eventually freed themselves and contacted police. Investigators immediately began looking for Gerena. They knew exactly who they were after. They also knew the vehicle. But finding the money was another story. About 18 hours later, the Buick was discovered abandoned approximately 8 miles away. Inside were firearms, but there was no Gerena, and there was no $7 million. The car had been abandoned, the money had disappeared, and somehow so had the man who knew exactly where it came from. At first, this looked like an extraordinary inside job, but investigators were about to discover that they weren't dealing with a lone thief. As the investigation developed, Gerena's name began appearing alongside something much larger. Federal investigators connected him to Los Macheteros, a Puerto Rican militant independence organization. And suddenly, the robbery looked very different. According to later federal records, the operation had been planned well in advance. The stolen money wasn't necessarily intended to make one man rich. Investigators believed it was connected to the organization's activities. After the robbery, Gerena and some of the money were moved toward Mexico. Eventually, investigators believed Gerena was taken to Cuba. The money went elsewhere. The trail had split. And that may have been the moment the investigation became almost impossible. For nearly 2 years, authorities worked to unravel the network behind the robbery. Then, in August 1985, the arrests began. Authorities eventually indicted numerous people connected to the operation. But there was one major problem. The man who had actually carried out the robbery was still gone. Victor Gerena had escaped, and he would remain ahead of investigators for decades. In 1984, Gerena was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. His photograph was distributed across the country. Brown hair, green eyes, 5'6" or 7. A distinguishing scar and mole on his right shoulder blade. And a warning, armed and dangerous. The FBI eventually offered a reward of up to $1 million for information leading to his arrest. But year after year passed, still nothing. Other people connected to the robbery were arrested. Others were convicted. But Gerena remained missing. Then came one of the strangest chapters. Victor Gerena spent approximately 32 years on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, longer than any other fugitive in the program's history. And then, in December 2016, his name was removed. But here's the twist. He had not been captured. The FBI removed him because he no longer met the criteria required to remain on the 10 Most Wanted list. He was still a fugitive, still wanted, still missing, and the mystery was still alive. Today, Victor Gerena would be in his late 60s. The FBI's historical records have continued to identify him in connection with the Wells Fargo robbery. Investigators have long believed he may have been hiding in Cuba, but no confirmed location has ever brought this story to an end. And that is what makes the case so extraordinary. The investigators eventually found the organization. They arrested other participants. They traced parts of the money. They spent decades hunting the people connected to the robbery. But the man at the center of it all never walked into a courtroom, never explained what happened, never revealed where the money went, and never told anyone how he managed to disappear. 43 years later, the money is still gone. The fugitive is still missing. And somewhere in the world, if Victor Gerena is still alive, there may be one person who knows exactly how this story ends: Victor Gerena himself.